Hello everyone, and welcome to our Everything But the Kitchen Sink webinar. This is the first, hopefully successful, webinar that we have done, and we hope to kind of make a series out of these. So you guys are a little bit our test subjects for this. Before we begin, I just want to say a little bit about what this is about. We're going to do a very broad overview of basically what a Mirrix loom is, the different types of things you can make on a Mirrix, the different looms that we have. If you already have a Mirrix, there's going to be some repetition for you. But you might learn something new, learn something about us, we hope. Now, there seems to be a little bit of lag time with the webinar service, which is we're using, as you can see, Google On Air. There seems to be a bit of a lag time. So I do have it set up where you can ask questions, and at the very end, I will address any questions that we get, if that part is working. Not positive if it will be. But it may not be in exact real time. We're seeing about a 30-second lag right now. I'm not sure if this is our connection or if there's another issue. But so if you have questions, ask there. We'll either answer them at the end of the webinar, or we can answer via email later on. And also, if you have any questions after the webinar, if you are later on listening to and watching the webinar on YouTube, you can always email questions to elena@mirrixlooms.com or any of our email addresses on the website. Okay, so let's get started. Your webinar will begin shortly, actually, right now. So to start off, we want to introduce ourselves. My name is Elena. I am the Marketing and Operating Officer. Yes, that's my job title. Couldn't remember there. And this is
Claudia, and I am the President and CEO of Mirrix Looms.
So we are here to tell you a little bit about our company. If you didn't know, Claudia is my mom. She actually started the company many years ago. I'm 30 now, so almost 19 years ago. So what is a Mirrix loom? Let's start out with that. Mirrix looms are upright, portable metal looms that are primarily meant for bead weaving, tapestry weaving, and bead and fiber combination. That said, our customers have come up with so many great ways to use their loom. We have people doing wire weaving, rug weaving, and we're going to talk about some of the possibilities on a Mirrix, but they really are, we're learning endless. There's one incredible artist who has some work in our gallery on our website who does weaving with wire, warp, and paper that is just absolutely incredible. So there are a lot of options. It is more than just a tapestry loom or a bead loom. The concept behind weaving beads and weaving tapestry is actually fairly simple. The loom is a fairly simple frame loom, but the techniques and the possibilities really abound. So as I said, there's so much that you can do on a Mirrix. So now Claudia is going to talk a little bit about how Mirrix Looms was started.
Well, if you do the math, Lainey's 30, we started 19 years ago. She wasn't very old when I started it, so she doesn't really have a memory exactly of what happened, but I do. Mirrix was literally started in a garage. I had an idea for a loom I wanted, the size I wanted. I wanted it to be very, very portable. I wanted to fit in my lap. I wanted to be able to take it to all my kids' events, as long as I wasn't coaching them. And so I asked a friend to make this particular loom. And as I said, he had a garage full of copper and aluminum and steel and other bits and pieces. And he put together the Mirrix prototype, which actually looks very similar to the current loom. And I realized I don't think I even have one, but I remember it's very similar. We then worked on tweaking things, having things manufactured for us, specifically for the loom, figuring out how to manufacture stuff ourselves. And we have the loom that we have today. It is any accessory that would fit on the current loom would fit on the first loom we ever made. We tried to do that. So let me see, what else do I want to tell you about Mirrix Looms?
Well, let's talk about what Mirrix is today. Sunshine House.
Okay, yeah, good. Mirrix, well then, I eventually bought the man out. I went into business with this man. And oh, I want to tell you how the first show we went to. So we were living in Wisconsin when we started the business. We knew that we were moving to New Hampshire eventually. But I was silly. I thought, I'll just start a business in Wisconsin anyway. We moved to New Hampshire 6 months after we started the business. And that's exactly when we started marketing the loom. And I realized the best way to get this loom seen was to have it at Convergence. But I couldn't be at Convergence in 1996 because I was driving to New Hampshire when that was happening. So I called up Earth Guild and I said, if I send you 20 looms, I pay the shipping, you try to sell them. If you don't, you send them back to me, I'll pay the shipping. Would you do that? And they said yes. I was thrilled. I got back, I got to New Hampshire, I plugged in my phone. I had an 800 number at the time, so I could, when I plugged in my phone, the 800 number was active again, and I immediately got a phone call. And this woman said, I want to buy a Mirrix Loom. And I said, oh, great. She said, I saw them at Convergence. I said, why didn't you buy them at Convergence? She said, they were all gone. And we knew we were going to be successful at that point. I was completely thrilled. Since the garage days, Mirrix has moved to a place called Sunshine House, which employs people with disabilities. And oh my gosh, we've been there like 14 years, I think. 14 or 15 years, a really long time. And it's completely housed there. It's gorgeous, this whole operation Mirrix is there. Add anything to that? See, well, you were alive when you were growing up when that happened.
Basically what Sunshine House does is they offer supported employment. So they do things like they can go and pick up the people who are working and give them a way to support their families, to support themselves, and really help them do that. So we have people from, simply polishing the looms to more advanced things like cutting the aluminum and the copper and stuff like that. It's a wonderful place to go and to be. And I can say with certainty that no other product is made with so much pride as Mirrix Looms.
There's one product that is not made at Sunshine House, and that is the Spencer Power Treadle. In fact, I am in Seattle right now with Elena and with Spencer, and we did a video of that. But Spencer makes that, and he's my brother, and he does an awesome job with that. He also makes the clips that go on the loom.
So this is a family affair.
It's very much a family affair, and it spans the entire country.
So enough about us. I think now we're going to talk about what you can make on a Mirrix Loom. So we just have a couple of examples. I'm just going to go through a little list of things that you can make. So the Mirrix Loom was originally, as Claudia mentioned, developed for tapestry weaving. So you can make tapestry woven wall hangings. You can make things like purses or pillows or, all sorts of stuff like that. But it is also a bead loom. So you can make bead pieces like beaded bracelets. You can make, depending on the size loom you have, you can make beaded, wall hangings, large pieces. You can make things like little beaded purses. You can make rugs. In fact, we have one customer who just showed me the first picture of the first rug she made on her Mirrix Loom, and it was just blew my mind. Now I want to go into rug making or something like that. You can do things like I mentioned before. You can do wire weaving with wire warp, or even some people have incorporated wire weft. Because a Mirrix Loom is so strong, it allows you to use something like wire on it. You can do mixed media weaving. We've done a lot with combining beads and fiber, which is something that has attracted a lot of people to our looms. You can do rag weaving, sayori weaving. There's so many possibilities. I can't even name them all. So I'm going to have Claudia go through and just talk about a couple of projects that she's made. So what can you make on a Mirrix Loom? We will start with this.
Well, you can make practical items. This is a tapestry purse. You can see it's slit tapestry. And, you can make eyeglass cases. And in the beginning, I actually made a lot of eyeglass cases and a lot of purses when I first started weaving. And I sold them and probably didn't make much money because they take so long to make. But they're wonderful to own and give away. So that's the first example. That can be done on 12-inch loom or larger. This is a typical bead weaving. You can see it's all one-size beads. It's delicate beads. And I turned it into a cuff. You can make so many kinds of jewelry on the loom. This is just one example.
And this was actually made, this is a no warp ends bracelet. So
Right.
There's a kit, which we'll talk about later on in the webinar. And it basically allows you to only have 2 ends of warp to finish in.
Yeah, see on the edge there, the warps aren't sewn in there. The edge, just 3 beads to the right of the button. There are no ends. It's kind of wonderful.
So this piece was incredibly easy to finish.
Okay, this silly little thing. It's a silly little thing, but I have a lot of these that are really large in my house that I've made on the Mirrix Loom. This is a little mug rat. Mug mat.
Mug rug.
A mug rug. And I think this was a weave along. But just shows you that you can weave rags on the Mirrix Loom.
And actually, I have this sample that sits next to my bed that I put my
You
water
use it?
on at night. Yeah, I love this.
That's impressive.
It's such like a little simple thing, but it's really great and useful. Okay.
Okay, this is the famous tapestry bead cuff. I came up with this design to teach on Crafts Day, which is a wonderful format. You should go there. Go to craftsday.com, and this class is just fabulous because it's long and it's very involved. But this cuff, the whole concept of this cuff was to introduce tapestry to people who have never woven it and might be afraid of the whole concept. Yes, it's tapestry light, but it does show you how you weave fibers on the loom. My idea was if you wove in beads every once in a while, that it would help you, if you're pulling in, it would help make your warps even again. It's hard to mess up with this cuff, and it's just so much fun. I've made zillions of them.
What she means by pulling in is in tapestry weaving, it's easy to pull your weft threads too tightly so the edges aren't straight, the selvages, which means edges of your weaving aren't straight. So this is a good way to get into both tapestry weaving and kind of just start to play with fiber, and also to get a little bit into bead weaving and combining the two really, it's fun. The class she was talking about on Craftsy that teaches this project and a bunch of other projects, students can submit their pictures of the work that they created, and some people have used the kits and the same beads and fiber that we use, and some people, their first cuff, they want to use whatever they have around, whatever beads they have around, whatever fiber they have around, and people come up with some really, really amazing stuff just by using different materials and the ideas of these techniques.
Yeah, if you go to Craftsy, you can see it, but if you do a search for this, I think there literally have been hundreds of these cuffs made.
Yeah, and you can buy some.
You can buy them on Etsy. Not mine, someone else's, but that's great too. Okay, this is another typical bead weaving, straight bead weaving. This is what was supposed to be an iPhone case, but it only fits the 4s, I think, and the 5s. We're gonna have to add beads to make it a little bigger. This is a straight bead weaving. I folded it, I wove it lengthwise. You can make it on the 8-inch loom. I did use the shedding device. You don't have to. Folded it up, lined it with silk, and I love that purse. It's a lot of fun to own. Lainey, you own one, right? But you can't use it anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't fit my iPhone 6. But the interesting thing about this purse, 2 interesting things. One is that it's so strong. I am not nice to my cell phone cases. I throw them into my purse, and then, I had one of these that I had in my purse for years, and nothing ever happened to it. And the other thing that's interesting about, this is a little bit larger of a piece than a jewelry piece. And you can weave this with the shedding device, which we're going to talk about this in a little bit, or without the shedding device. And it's kind of interesting to maybe make one with and one without, and kind of compare those different methods with a wider piece like this. Okay.
This piece was made on our largest loom, 38-inch loom. I think it's about 35 inches wide, and I can't tell, maybe 2.5 feet tall. It's called They Worship the Sun God, and It's one of Lainey's favorite pieces of mine, but someone bought it, Lainey. I'm sorry.
I know. I love
This was a blast to weave, but this gives you an example of more traditional tapestry, and how large a piece you can make on the loom.
Definitely, yeah. So you can, some people are obviously going to make pieces larger than that, but even a lot of professional tapestry weavers weave on our looms and weave, they just have Mirrix looms even for their largest pieces. Because a 38-inch loom can make, I forget the exact dimensions, but it varies, 35 by 64?
No, 35 by 44.
Yeah, you can
which
see
which it turns out for me is huge. I don't usually make bigger pieces than that.
Okay, so now we're just going to talk briefly about each of our looms. We have 8 different sizes of looms and a couple different variations. I'll just start.
I want to start with that.
Okay.
You can start with the one that was named after you.
You start with
Okay, this is the mini Mirrix. She's tiny. She never has a shedding device. She used to only have one spring, but now you can buy, other springs for her. She is warped differently. She doesn't have clips on her, so you warp her differently. She's really fun. You can put her in a purse and take her anywhere. And she's very good for making things like bracelets or really tiny tapestries that you want to needle weave. I think the widest piece you can make on her is 2.5 inches,
yeah.
And the tallest is actually 14 inches. You can therefore weave a necklace on her. And so it's great for someone who just really wants to make, jewelry and doesn't want a shedding device.
And another thing, I think probably most of the mini Mirrixes we sell are as second or third or fourth looms. So people have a loom at home and then they want one that they can just throw in their purse and take with them places, which is neat because you really can just throw this loom in your purse with you. Okay, so the next one, this is the 8-inch Laney loom, which, as Claudia mentioned, is named after me. The Laney loom has a couple different features than other looms. One is that it only has one fold-out leg. You can actually order another one for it, but because it's so thin, only one leg will fit under the loom and still be able to fold over. So you can stand it on a table with that one leg. And this loom comes with or without the shedding device. So you can choose if you want to use that. Now, we'll talk about this a little later, but basically what the shedding device is it was developed for tapestry weaving. So you have your warp threads, and those are the threads that go around your loom. What the shedding device does is it connects to your warp threads. And when you move the shedding device in one direction, it lifts up half your warp threads. And when you move your shedding device in another direction, it lifts up the other half of those warp threads. And what that allows you to do is, instead of, think about what the concept of weaving is, you're going in and out weaving between your warp threads. Instead of having to do that, you can just lift up half of those and bring your fiber through those warp threads. So it makes tapestry weaving much easier. I can't imagine. I mean, I know a lot of people do. I can't imagine weaving without a shedding device. But we realized, there was a time when Mirrix transitioned to, we realized that you could, well, Claudia realized that you could weave beads on a Mirrix as well. And we realized that you could use the shedding device to weave beads. And so it's basically the same concept. Normally when you weave beads, and again, we'll talk about this a little later, is you put your beads on a thread, and then you place those behind and between your warp threads, and you sew back through. So basically, you're sewing your beads onto your warp threads, the threads that go around the loom. With the shedding device, instead of doing that, you have double warp threads, and you're lifting up half of those and just placing your beads in between those warp threads instead of having to sew back in. So instead of having double weft, so double threads that go back and forth horizontally in the loom, you have double warp. So it makes, there's setup is a little more difficult for bead weaving, with the shedding device. You have to learn how to put that on. And it takes some time to learn, but once you do, it's incredibly fast and really, really fun. So this loom can come with or without the shedding device. Another thing the shedding device is good for is combining beads and fiber. I think it's much easier to use the shedding device for that. So this is the Laney loom. It can make a piece 5 inches across and 24 inches long. It's a great little loom, and I am totally biased. But next,
I just want to mention one thing. I did the experiment recently. I was weaving some tapestry cuffs, which I still love to weave, and I did 2 using just needles and not the shedding device, and then I did one using the shedding device. It's 3 times faster when you use the shedding device. This is the first loom that we're showing you a shedding device on. I think it's a 12-inch loom, and called the Little Guy. And I'm going to just take you through the parts of the loom. If you see on top, there's a little tray there, and there's a spring that attaches to the 2 brass nuts on either side. The spring determines how many warps you have in the loom. The warps are the threads that go on the loom. The looms come with 8, 12, 14, 18. The numbers reflect the number of dents in an inch. So if you want your set to be 8 ends per inch, you put on the size 8 spring. And you move down from that, and you see on either side these 2 blocks of wood. Those are the clips, what we call the clips. And when they swing to the back of the loom, and those actually come on the 8-inch loom. They're not in the picture, but when they swing to the back, you put what is called a warping bar. It's a aluminum bar in those holes, and you use that to warp. I'm going to talk about that later on, how that happens. And then the shedding device is that piece, and then you swing the clips back, and the shedding device is in the 2 U's in the wooden things.
So that's the copper piece that goes across. That's the shedding device.
And the way you get tension on the loom is with the wing nuts. Now, the deal is, if you just picked up the top of the loom, it would come apart. Those 2 pieces come apart. And by the way, the loom comes fully assembled. But once you put warp on, when you turn those wing nuts, that's how you get tension on the loom. And then moving down, you see the 2 legs that swing out to hold the loom upright. This loom can also be used in your lap because it's small enough.
Two things to mention. One is the 12-inch is also available with or without the shedding device, because a lot of bead weavers who don't use the shedding device like to be able to have that size. But if you do have a loom that comes with a shedding device on it, you don't have to always use the shedding device. You can use it whenever you want to. And then there was one more thing I wanted to mention. Now I don't remember what that is. Oh, the swing out legs. The legs on all of the looms can swing under the loom, and that just reminded me that one of the really great aspects of a Mirrix loom is how portable they are. Even our largest loom is incredibly portable. And I live in an absolutely tiny city apartment, so I really appreciate that portability. But it's also good because the 12-inch, yesterday, we went to a little tapestry meeting, and Claudia brought her 16-inch loom, and I brought my 12-inch loom, and they're so easy to carry, to just put in a tote bag and carry around. So that's just another aspect of the Mirrix that is awesome.
Although I made her carry my 16-inch loom, and I carried her 12-inch loom.
She also brought an electric treadle. So.
Oh yeah, I had an electric treadle attached. That was kind of fun.
So this is the 16-inch loom.
Right. Oh, you're
yeah,
supposed to talk
it's my
about
turn. This is the 16-inch loom, the 16-inch big sister loom, which was also kind of named after me. This was before I even had anything to do with Mirrix. It's it's the same as the 12-inch loom. Basically, it's just a little bit bigger, and it comes with a shedding device. You can't get it without the shedding device. But as I said before, you don't have to use the shedding device. So that's it. That's the 16-inch loom.
Which actually is our most popular loom.
It's our most
by far. Because tapestry weavers buy, bead weavers buy. It's good for everybody. Even the 12 is good for everybody. This is the one people tend
it's a great,
yeah. Or as a second loom if they have a bigger one. This is their workshop loom.
It's a great size because it's still portable, but you can also make a fairly large piece. And if you want to look at, if you go to our website and look at the different looms on the loom pages in the store, you can see the exact dimensions and how much each loom weighs and all that other information.
Wasn't that the weaving group we were at? Did everybody except one person had a Mirrix loom? I think the one who didn't is going to get one. But did they have 12s or 16s? It was mainly 16s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Except you were the only one with a 12.
No, one other person had 12.
Okay.
Okay, so.
That's the 22-inch Zach loom. There's not really a lot I can say about it. Oh, I know what I can say. I don't think I mentioned the handle and the shedding device before. That's on the right side. And the shedding device can either be put with the handle on the right side or on the left side because these are supposed to be for left-handed or right-handed people. We are not biased.
Yes, that's actually a really good point. So the 22 inch is just a little bit bigger. Then we have the 28 inch. The 28 inch loom was actually named, oh, by the way, the other one is called the Zach loom. Oh, you did? Yeah, you did. And this is called the McKinley loom, and this was actually named after one of our wonderful customers, McKinley, who was looking for a size loom that was between the 22 inch loom and the 32 inch loom. The McKinley is actually shaped a little bit differently because it's a little bit taller as far as proportions. And this is the first of our looms as far as size goes. It has double beams on the top and the bottom because it needs a little bit more strength. One thing to mention, I'm not sure if we mentioned before, was that when we say like the 8 inch loom or the 28 inch loom, that is the width of the top and bottom beams. So that's not necessarily your weaving width because it's a little bit smaller than that, but you can get a pretty good idea of the weaving width by knowing what that number is.
Yeah, the deal with the 28 inch loom, it can expand the same height as the 32 and 36, which is about, you can make a 38. Oh my gosh, whatever, 36. It's weaving with a length of about 44 inches. So the idea of this is you can make a small rug on it. It had the right proportions for that.
Okay, and this is.
It's your turn.
No, I just did.
Oh, okay, but I want to talk about the Zeus loom, so I'm going to let you talk about that.
Okay, this is the 32 inch Joni loom, which is named after Claudia's best friend, Joni. It is 32 inches across. It also has double top and bottom beams and all the features of the other looms. And
the Zeus loom. I'm going to tell you the story about this. There's a story. Someone called me up and said, I'm using a traditional Navajo loom. I have this weaving on it, but I'm having a horrible time with the loom. Do you have a loom that's big enough for me to transfer my weaving onto? And I said, no, but we'll make you one. I'll make you one. I'll make me one. And I'll test it. And if you like it, you're going to have to pay for it. If you don't like it, just send it back. I sent her, we had it made. We sent her the loom. She was able to easily transfer her Navajo, her piece off the Navajo loom, put it on here, install the shedding device, and successfully finish her piece. This is a typical size for a larger Navajo loom. In other words, you can make a piece 35 inches wide, and I don't know what the typical length is. So that's why the Zeus loom was invented, and I love that story. And one more story. At this, shortly after that, we saw someone sent me a picture of an ad, and this loom was in the middle of a circle, and there are all these Navajo women sitting around it. There was a weaving on it, and the title was Navajo Women Sitting Around a Traditional Navajo Loom.
And I wish we had this picture. We don't know where it went. But if anybody has it, please send it to us. Another thing is the Zeus loom was named after our dog, my dog growing up, who is a big, galumpy, sweet, wonderful dog. We miss you, Zeus. Okay, so those are all our looms. Now we're just going to talk very briefly about setup and warping. Before we do, we have on our website detailed warping PDFs. You can find it right on the website. And then also we have fairly new videos that we made that can be found either in the video section of our site or on YouTube. And they really are incredibly, probably too detailed. I mean, they go on forever about everything you could possibly want to know about warping. And I was talking to somebody yesterday about how it's really helpful to watch the video just to see how the hand moves and just to see the whole process. So I definitely recommend checking out the videos on YouTube for warping. Now, one more thing I want to say, Claudia is going to talk about the actual warping, but there tends to be a fear of warping because it's something that's new and it looks a little bit confusing. But really remember that, first of all, it might take some time for you. You know, the first time you're warping, you're going to have to look back at the video and it's going to take a little time to understand it. Once you do, it's the easiest thing in the world. I could warp with my eyes closed, asleep probably.
I'm the one who sleepwalks, not you.
But the concept is really that you put this bar on the back of the loom, you tie onto it, and then you wrap around the loom, and every time you hit the bar in the back again, you do a figure 8 and come back around. So you're really just wrapping your warp threads around the loom. The concept is incredibly simple. So don't be intimidated by, oh, I have to warp it, it seems so hard, heddles, It's not as hard as you think it is. It's not nearly as hard as you think it is. So Claudia's just going to talk a little bit about the different types of warping. There are basically 4 different types of warping. Bead weaving without the shedding device, which is actually kind of similar to tapestry. Bead weaving with the shedding device, warping for tapestry, and then using the no warp ends kit, which was what we showed you with the checkerboard bracelet, where you only have 2 ends to finish it. So let's get started.
Okay, bead weaving, to warp for bead weaving without the shedding device, you're doing exactly the same thing as putting on a warp for tapestry. The only difference is you don't then put on the shedding device. And all you do is you put 1 warp per dent, when you decide what spring you want to put on the top of the loom. And you can see the warping bar is now in the clips. You tie the warping bar, and you go around the loom, and when you reach the warping bar again, you do a U-turn, you go around the front of the loom, and you keep doing that. This may not make any sense to you until you see the video, but it really is easy. And the neat thing is, if you don't put the warp on tightly, because when you adjust the loom, the warp will be tight. You just put it on evenly. You naturally will be putting it on evenly. Just don't answer the phone or go to the door. Don't stop in the middle. Although some people have stopped in the middle, it's been fine. So once you've done that, you then push that bar down, so you have at least 4 inches of warp showing, and you start weaving at the top of the front of the loom and the top of the bottom beam. I think that's all I need to say about warping for.
It's the easiest.
It's easiest. The difference between warping for beads with the shedding device and without is that with the shedding device, you're actually going to be putting 2 warps in every dent. And until you experience this and do it, it doesn't seem, it's hard to understand how that works. But it does, because if you're weaving with only 1 warp in every dent and you raised half of them, what your material would look like: a warp, 2 beads, a warp, 2 beads. So if you have 2 warps, your material will be a warp, a bead, a warp, a bead. One question you might have is, do the warps show when you're using the shedding device? And the answer is no, they don't show because they cross next to the beads. Okay, so the difference is you put 2 warps on, and then you put the shedding device. You swing the clips to the front, you put the shedding device on, and it has 2 bars on them. And you take what are heddles, we sell them. They're round circles of string, basically. And you hook it onto the first heddle onto that bar, and then you wrap around 1 of the warps in a dent, and you wrap it around the bar again. You can see that bar on top. We've separated out the first set of warps that you're going to put it around. And then you rotate the bar toward the loom, and you put heddles around the warps that you have not. And as I said, you need to really go see the video to see all the details and all the mistakes you can make and how it happens. This probably is the most difficult, simply because it's with beads. You have a lot of warps per inch, and you have the double warps. So you have to be really careful not to put the wrong heddles on. It's not hard to put the warps on the loom. Putting the heddles on, you have to be very careful that you're doing it right, because guess what? If you find that you screwed up, you kind of have to take them all out and do it over again. I've done that a few times in my life, and I assume everybody who's used the loom has, and you want to avoid it.
One thing that I tell people when I'm teaching them to warp is, especially anytime, but especially when you're just learning to warp, take your loom and go somewhere where you don't have your dog barking or your kids screaming or your husband asking you to do something, or the TV on, or the phone near you. Just concentrate on what you're doing, and it's easy. It's easy to make a mistake, but it's also easy to concentrate and not make a mistake. So just really be present when you're warping your loom. It's almost a meditative process, I think.
One more bit of advice. I tell everybody this, and most people listen to me. I know often when people buy the loom with the shedding device for bead weaving, they say, oh my gosh, I can do that portrait of the family I've always wanted to do that's going to be, 13 inches wide and 20 inches tall, and that's wonderful. Except before you do that, you want to put a really skinny piece on the loom and experiment with warping and find out everything that you can do wrong doing that, because you don't want to find it out when you have literally hundreds of warps in the loom. That's too frustrating.
I totally agree. You definitely want to do a test piece when you're weaving with the shedding device to start, just to understand the concept and how it works. Okay, now.
Tapestry, very simple. It's same thing as putting on a warp for the bead loom without the shedding device, 1 warp per dent, and then you put on the shedding device. You put warps 1, 3, etc. on the top and 2, 4 on the bottom, or the other way around. But so you put every warps on, heddles on every other warp, and then you rotate the shedding device toward the loom, and then you put the, every other one that you missed on the other bar, and you are done.
And actually, warping for tapestry is very easy because, you don't have the same problem as when you're warping for beads with the shedding device. Is that it depends on what size tapestry you're doing and what kind of dent you're using. But it tends to be that it's very easy to see which heddle you need to put on which warp thread.
And another advantage of the Mirrix with tapestry, I used to have big floor looms and that would take 2 days to warp up. And I found it was really hard to use linen on the floor looms because linen has no stretch, no elasticity to it. So when you tie it, you have to tie it exactly even all the way across the loom. When you put it on the Mirrix, because of the continuous warp situation, you can put on linen and it will have perfect tension all the way across. It's harder on your fingers to weave with, but the finished product made on linen is, I think, better than anything else. I love it. And no, we don't sell it on our website. I wish we did.
That's one thing. Did we talk about continuous warp?
Oh, and why we have it?
Yeah.
Oh, no, okay. So what happens is the reason you have that warping bar is that if you didn't have the warping bar, you would simply wrap your warp around the loom. And you'd have to tie off on the bottom bar or maybe the top bar, depending whether you have an even or odd number of warps. But you wouldn't be able to rotate your piece. Because of the warping bar, when you want to advance your weaving, you simply loosen the tension.
But advance your weaving means that once you've woven as far up you can on the front of the loom, that you can advance it or move it to the back of the loom and have more warp on the front to weave. So this means that you can weave a piece that's much larger than just the front of your loom.
And the looms adjust because each loom has a fair amount of adjustment anyway. For that loom can go way higher. But yeah, so you pull up on the warping bar in the back, and as you do that, your weaving slides down. The other thing is the shedding device works best when it has the most length of warp underneath it. It doesn't work well if you have it an inch away from your weaving. There's just not enough leverage there. So that was the concept, and that's it. That concept is really ancient, and Carol Russell told me about it. It was designed for simple frame looms so that people could get more length, and it was designed hundreds of years ago. That's not a new concept. It was the first. The Mirrix Loom, I think, was the first one to apply that concept.
So that is warping for tapestry. And now we're going to go back to beads for a little while.
Okay,
oh, wait, we have to go back. I just remembered something. One thing I wanted to talk about when we were talking about warping for tapestry is, and this, if you're a very beginning weaver, might be a little bit advanced for you, but is weaving with 2 shedding devices. Go.
And a lot of people have been doing that recently. It's been a lot of fun. What you do is you literally put on another shedding device. So remember how I said the top, but one of the bars has warps 1, 3, etc., and the bottom one has 2, 4, 6, 8. When you have a second shedding device, you can put like 1 and 4 on one, and then 2, and I'm not going to do the math here, but you can basically have 4 different sets, so that when you raise one of the shedding devices, warps 1, 4, will raise, and that allows you to weave twill, or you can set it up for basket weave, which is raising 2 threads at a time. And
so it's basically like you can make different patterns, or you can weave with different sizes of fiber. Because if you're lifting up twice as many on one and just one on the other,
Right.
you can use a really thin fiber for a piece of the weaving and a really thick one for another piece. It's really, really neat and fun. We have,
and that's like the needlepoint. We have needlepoint canvas that you can do petty point and gross point on at the same time. That's the kind of effect you have. I think, do you have a weave along on that?
yeah, we have a weave along called like double shedding. No, not a weave along. We have an ebook called, it was a weave along, now it's an ebook.
And it's
for
free.
double shedding device. Yes, it is free on our website.
All
so
our ebooks are free, by
check
the way.
that out. That's a really, really fun thing to play around with after you've done some tapestry. Okay, now the no warp ends kit.
People complain all the time when they weave beads that they have ends sticking out the top and the bottom. And there are various ways you can finish it, that you can sew them back in, or if it's a piece you're going to put on the wall, you can actually just tie them off and put them behind your piece. But when you're making a piece of jewelry, and remember the checkerboard cuff that we showed you in the beginning? Did you see how there were no ends? Well, there were two ends, one on one side and one on the other. This kit here allows you have two bars, you set them apart as much as you want your piece to be, including the length of those S hooks. So your piece, well, you can't see the bottom one. So you tie to one of the S hooks and you wrap around the bottom one, around the top one. You keep going in that zigzag pattern till you get as many warps as you want. And then you weave from the top of the bottom S hooks to the bottom of the top S hooks. And then you just slide the S hooks out, which fill up enough space so that when your beading thread, which has been stretched, goes back to its normal size, it will fill in the space that the S hooks left. You'll have two ends that you need to weave in, and that's it. So it makes finishing almost instantaneous.
Yes. So it's a really fun and really, really popular kit. I love it. I love the no warp ends kit. Okay. So now we are going to just talk about.
Wait, I want to say one more thing. For the no warp end kit, what Lainey loves about it is you can weave wire on it.
Yes.
And soft flex wire is what we've been working with, because you don't have to sew in a bunch of, I don't even know how you would sew in a bunch of
one of the problems, the reasons it's difficult to weave wires as your warp is that how do you tie, how do you finish a piece of wire? How do you tie that into your piece, especially when you have a lot of different pieces? The no warp ends kit allows you to do that. So we just use like a crimp bead on the two ends that you have to finish, and the rest you don't have to deal with that. So that's a really, really fun thing to play with. We have a free ebook called the Changing Seasons ebook that's a wire and bead piece that you may want to check out. That's really fun using the no warp ends kit.
And the picture's right there.
Yeah, actually the picture of that is there. So now we're just going to talk very basically about the different types of weaving that you can do on a Mirrix Loom: tapestry weaving, bead weaving, and combining beads and fiber. As I've said a million times, I feel like there are more options than this, but we're just gonna talk about these. We're gonna start Claudia off with tapestry weaving because that is her expertise.
Okay, tapestry weaving. Tapestry weaving probably is what, it can be a little intimidating in the beginning, but I think it's the highest, most incredible art form that there is. I don't know why everybody on this earth does not want to have tapestry weavings hanging all over their houses like the kings used to have. And by the way, they used to hang in the castles to keep the kings and his crew, his queen and everybody warm. And they used to take them to battle and put them up in their tents as well. You probably didn't need to know that. Tapestry weaving, basically the warps that you put on the loom are going to be completely covered. It's called a weft-faced weaving, meaning that only the weft, what you weave into it, shows. It also has discontinuous wefts, which means, and you can see, in this piece, the colors stop and end all the way across the piece. Well, they're all different pieces of yarn, and this piece I've never woven from side to side at all, not one place. You can see it. You can see how that you can. So the tapestry, you can build up geometric shapes. You can do realistic pieces. You can do all sorts of incredible shading, and it is amazing. And you can do it on a very simple level, or you can do it on an extremely complex level. But it's something that I wish everybody who gets a Mirrix Loom will at least try. You will want to get You would want to take a course like Rebecca Medzoff has a fabulous course,
An online
course, and or get yourself or go to one of the wonderful teachers. She also teaches, Kathy Tadhoker. Many teachers out there, Japanese, whatever. If I left someone out, please forgive me. But we have them on the website. Okay, we have them listed on the website. There's so many wonderful people out there. You want to get a good book, and we sell some on our site, but you can get them other places where they show you all the techniques.
So basically, what she's saying is that it's hard to go into tapestry weaving and just say, all right, I have a loom, I have some fiber, I have some warp, let me get started. You really want to read about tapestry weaving and look at, diagrams of the different techniques and stuff like that, or learn directly from somebody. It's going to make the process a lot easier, because trying to learn on your own would be a very time-intensive
and
process.
Also learning what materials to use. People get basically your warp has to be incredibly strong. If you can easily break it with your hands, no, it's not good. There are materials that are designed specifically for warp. They're in wool, in cotton, and in linen. And some people, for mini, tiny little tapestries use, thread, but it has to be strong enough for what you're doing. And then the weft needs to be beautiful. That's what's going to show. You don't want to use anything that is not beautiful. And we recommend that you use wool or silk or cotton or linen for that. Natural fibers are what most tapestry weavers tend to use because they are beautiful.
One thing I recommend you doing is go to the American Tapestry Alliance website and check out some of the weavers and the weavings on there. You may be intimidated by how mind-blowingly wonderful some of this stuff is, but you are also going to be so inspired. There is nothing like, we love tapestry, so we're a little bit biased here. One other thing I want to mention too is when you're weaving tapestry, what you need to get started is basically a loom, a Mirrix, heddles, which are those things that wrap around the shedding device, and then warp, weft, and a beater or a fork, so something to beat down those wefts with. But that's, and a nice pair of scissors and a measuring tape, some real basic things. But you don't need a whole lot to get started. You don't need tons of accessories and stuff, although we're going to talk about accessories.
Although you left one thing out. I used to tell everybody to make butterflies. You'll see that in any book how that's done. I think we show it on the website. But we also now carry bobbins, wooden bobbins for people that are a good size for this loom. I don't use them necessarily. I prefer butterflies because I like to make a whole basket of my butterflies, the pieces I'll be weaving with, and I'd have to probably invest more money than I have in bobbins if I want to do that.
So there are a lot of options. You could use bobbins, but you don't need to. To really get started with the basics, there's not a whole lot you need besides your loom. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about bead weaving. The thing about bead weaving is that the learning curve is different than tapestry. Tapestry is more involved to get started. Bead weaving, it's really easy to get started, work your loom, and weave an absolutely fabulous piece from the beginning. There are a lot of options. There are a lot of different things you can do and ways to be creative, and the design is incredibly important. You can do things like weave with different size beads, use different finishing methods, different kinds of embellishments and stuff like that. And also, people think people think that a bead weaving has to be this square or rectangle, and it doesn't. You can weave something that isn't square. You can weave split loom necklaces and things like that. You have to figure out how you're going to deal with finishing those warp threads and sewing them back into your piece. But there's so many just incredible design options out there. And again, you can do stuff like this piece in the picture was a piece woven with wire warp, like we were talking about before. One of the things you need to decide when you get started bead weaving is whether or not to use the shedding device. And we talked about that before. If you don't think you're going to use the shedding device, get a loom without the shedding device, and you can always purchase one later if you decide you want to use one. You can also start get a loom with a shedding device, start weaving without one, and then later on get into the shedding device weaving. If you're interested at all in doing any kind of fiber weaving with your bead weaving or without your bead weaving, I definitely recommend getting one though.
Also, if you're only going to do small jewelry pieces, it's not necessary to have the shedding device. It really becomes effective after your piece is like 1.5 inches wide. The wider your piece, the easier it is to weave with a shedding device.
So to get started with bead weaving, you need your loom, heddles if you're going to use the shedding device, and then beads, bead thread. You'll have to choose, and this is the same for tapestry weaving, you have to choose which warp coil, and that's that spring on the top of the loom. And choosing which one will space your beads correctly. So if you have really big beads, you'll choose a different warp coil than if you had really small beads. And then again, a good needle. We sell tulip bead weaving needles, which are really great. They don't break very easily. Good pair of scissors. But again, to just get started, you don't need a whole lot besides your loom. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about combining bead and fiber. This picture right here is of a dog collar weave along that we did that Claudia made. Is this not adorable? I just absolutely love it.
You can make them for your cat too.
Yes, sorry. Somebody emailed me today and she was making one for her friend's puppy shower.
That's so cute. You can also put it on a horse head, a horse
definitely.
harness. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things you can do with it.
But anyway, so the basic concept of combining beads and fiber, you can learn in either the dog collar ebook, which shows without the shedding device how to do this, or our tapestry bead cuff ebook, and these are free in the project section of our website. And it will show you how to combine beads and fiber. The basic concept is that you need to have the right spacing. So, for example, for the tapestry bead cuff bracelet, we use 8/0 beads and a 10-den coil. So the 10-den is the coil that is spacing those beads. So the big thing that you need to learn and figure out when you're combining beads and fiber is what that spacing should be. So if you just use one of our ideas for our projects, we've already set that up. But you can also experiment on your own and use your own beads and your own fiber and figure out what works for you. So this really, there's so many possibilities with combining beads and fiber. All right, now we don't have too much time left, but we are just going to briefly talk about accessories. These aren't all our accessories. If you go to our accessories page on our website, we have a huge list of them. These are some of the most popular ones. As I said, you don't need accessories to get started, but you may really want some of these accessories. So we're just going to really quickly go through these.
Okay, so they're going to go from left clockwise, or whatever you're going to do. Okay, this is the Spencer power treadle that, as I told you, Spencer, my brother, I came up with the idea. He came up with the reality. It works beautifully. We've perfected everything about it.
What a treadle is.
Okay, what is a treadle? Would you like to know what a treadle is? A treadle replaces the handle. When you're using the shedding device, you have to rotate the shedding bar up and down. Now, if you're weaving beads, you don't need that treadle because you don't use the shedding device as frequently as when you are weaving tapestry. When you're weaving tapestry, you tend to use it a lot, or you can use it a lot. This that cream color thing on top is the foot pedal. The motor attaches to the side of the shedding device, and you use your foot to press down and on that switch to change the shed. Therefore, you don't have to remove your hands from the piece, and you can just continue weaving. And I think it probably makes it twice as fast. Next. That's the stand with the treadle on it. The treadle holds any size loom from, a mini would be kind of silly, but even the 8-inch. But you could do an 8-inch and a 12. Has a cute, nice little tray there. It's adjustable from a very, very low sitting position to a very tall standing position. So if you want to act like a painter and weave tapestry, you can. You don't have to have the shedding device with it, but the combination of a large loom, a stand, and a shedding device essentially turns this into turns this into a floor loom. And then when you don't want to look at it anymore, you can shove it underneath your bed. And that's kind of the nice thing about it. But who would not want to look at it? Or you can like lean against the wall, but It's good for small spaces. The footprint on that is about 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. It doesn't take a lot of room.
All right.
Bottom spring kit. We invented this because when people warp for bead weaving with the shedding device, it sometimes gets, and they're doing a wide piece, it sometimes becomes a big headache to isolate those pairs of warps correctly. This allows you, this has double-sided tape, you easily put it on the loom, and it allows you to put a spring on the bottom of the loom that coordinates with the spring on top. Other people who weave small format tapestry, which is you have a lot of end fringe up to like 22 or even more, and you're using like sewing thread to weave. They like this for separating their threads on the bottom. They love it. For the beginning, it makes the beginning very even. And yes, you can use it for regular tapestry. When you want to rotate your piece around, you have to remove the spring to do that.
Yeah, that's an important note, actually. I heard recently that somebody had said that you can't, if you're using the bottom spring kit, you can't advance your piece. You can, you just need to take the spring off, which you can just unhook it and bring it behind the piece. This is, I think, our most popular accessory. If you're weaving with the shedding device, I pretty much just recommend getting it. If you're weaving without the shedding beads, if you're weaving beads with the shedding device, I recommend it. If you're weaving beads without the shedding device, if it's going to be wider than a few inches, a couple inches, I would also recommend it because it's just really helpful to organize those warp threads at the bottom of the loom. But as I said, you don't need to get started.
It's another thing that does, when you start weaving a tapestry without this kit, you have to weave in 2 threads to form a base, and you tie it around the side poles. If you have this, you don't have to. You know, my opinion would be, if you're weaving small format tapestry, you might want it. If you're weaving big tapestries, the jury's out. You don't need it.
All right.
I feel like click and clack on car talk. I really do. Loom extenders. They come in.
Start a radio show.
No, please. Okay, loom extenders. They come in 2 different sizes. The original size, which is this one, which is very long, fits on the 12 and 16-inch loom. It's extenders for the threaded side bars. It turns the loom into Alice in Wonderland after she's gone to the looking glass. It just makes it really tall, great for weaving, beaded belts and guitar straps or whatever. It gives the loom about another 2.5 feet of height. As I said, though, it's only for the 12 and 16-inch loom. Now, it also comes with feet extenders. It makes it really tall, okay? You can't use the longer set on any of the other looms because it makes them torque. But someone wanted one for the 22-inch loom, and these were too long. And we realized that if we made shorter ones, you could actually use that on the 22-inch loom. We don't recommend the 3 biggest looms because they're already very tall, and making them even a little bit taller, I think, would take away their stability.
All right. So this is what we talked about before, the second shedding device.
Second shedding device, it either comes with clips or doesn't. The reason you would buy it without clips is you bought the 8-inch loom without a shedding device or the 12-inch loom without a shedding device, and you want to buy the shedding device, we can sell you just a shedding device. But if you want 2 on your loom, you need to buy it with the extra clips. And the way you put the clips on is when you separate the top and bottom part of your loom, at the bottom of the copper sidebars is a bushing, and it easily is removed, and then you stick the clip in, and then you put the bushing back.
All right.
This is the extra warping part kit. Now, the reason it has 2 functions. One is some people don't like to waste a lot of warp. It's a lot of expensive warp, especially when they're doing wire weaving or whatever. This allows you to put on a much shorter warp. The 2 warping bars will be in the back of the loom, very close to the bottom beams, and they'll be attached by that white cord you see. And then basically just have warp on the front of the loom. And the other thing it's good for is when you're weaving a wide bead piece, it's a lot easier, and you're not using a shedding device, and you have to hold your beads in place while you sew through them. It makes it a lot easier to get your hands back there if there's not a warp behind you.
We kind of already talked about this.
We talked about this. This is cool. It's
No
so
ornaments
cool.
kit
So cool.
again, and this is maybe our most popular kit.
It's popular.
Yeah, people love this. All right, so now we just kind of want to talk about what you need to get started. These are some basic steps I wrote out. Choose what type of weaving you might want to try. Do you want to do tapestry weaving? Do you want to do bead weaving? Do you want to combine the two? Are you interested in wire? Then decide if the shedding device is right for you. Remember, if you buy an 8-inch or 12-inch, you can get it without a loom without the shedding device, and then you can add one on later. And it's not that much more expensive to do it that way. So think about that. If you go to our website, there's more information on the shedding device that you can see. The moral of all this is there's so much information on our website that you can find anything you possibly want to know about our looms. Now think about, the third one would be, think about what size loom would fit you best. The two things you want to weigh are how big of a piece might you want to make in the future or now, and how important is portability to you. So you can kind of look at our different loom sizes, what they can make, how much they weigh, and decide what would be the best fit for you. Some people get another loom. Okay, right now I want a 16-inch loom. Later on, I'm going to get a 28-inch loom, but right now I'll start with this mid-size. We have on our website a form that you can fill out about getting help choosing loom, and you can fill out some different things, how wide a piece do you want to do, all these different sections, and we'll actually write back and say what kind of loom, what loom we recommend for you, and if you have any other information, about which accessories maybe you would want to choose. So the next one is to decide if there are any accessories you'd like to start with. As I keep saying, you really don't have to. But let's say that you want to weave with wire. You might want to start off with a no warp ends kit. Or if you want to weave really wide bead pieces with the shedding device, start off with the bottom spring kit. But you can always add on accessories later. The next one is to choose the best way to start learning. For tapestry, as we mentioned, you're going to want to get a book or a class or an online class. For bead weaving, you may want to start with a kit that has instructions. So just kind of decide what your plan is, how you're going to learn, especially with tapestry. With bead weaving, you can really kind of start on your own. With tapestry, you want to focus on how will you learn. What's your plan going to be. And as Claudia mentioned before, you can start off weaving tapestry very, in a very basic way, or you can get very, very advanced and spend years and years and years honing your craft. So then the next one is figure out what supplies you need. If you're weaving a tapestry, figure out what tapestry yarn you want. Think about getting a beater or just using a fork. Figure out exactly what you want to start experimenting with. If you're weaving beads, the same thing. But also remember that when you get started, if you happen to have a lot of beads around from something else, you can always use whatever you have, pretty much. One of the questions we get, this isn't totally related, but one question we get a lot is, what beads can I use on a Mirrix loom? And the answer is pretty much anything. Any size, any different beads you have, you can play with and experiment with. And sometimes you want to start out with something that isn't very expensive and you just have lying around. You can learn a lot that way. And then start weaving. So it's basically a matter of choosing what calls to you the most and getting started. And we have so many resources, as I said, on our website to help you get started. We have free projects, we have tutorials, we have videos, we have weave-alongs, we have online classes, we have tons of information there. And also, Claudia and I are always here to help. So if you have a question, email us and we will answer any questions you have.
And another thing is, we'd love to hear your suggestions. What kind of kits you'd like to see, what kind of webinars you'd like us to do, what kind of ebooks you want us to write. And our ebooks are always going to be free. Sometimes they come with a kit, sometimes they just come on their own, but you can get a lot of information. Contact us, either write to Elena at mirrixlooms.com or Claudia at mirrixlooms.com and tell us what you want.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, I'm actually going to X out of this, but if you have any questions, feel free to email me, see if there are any questions that I can see on here. So anything that we need to answer right now. So we are finished. Thank you so much for watching or listening, or if you're watching this on YouTube, which, by the way, if you came in part way and did see the whole thing, this is available on YouTube, and we will send everybody who is signed up for the webinar a link. And also, if you're signed up for the webinar, you may get a little something special in your email too.
You think so?
So look out for that.
A little coupon code or something?
Thank you guys so much for bearing with us on our first webinar.
It was successful. I think we tried once before and we couldn't get the software to work. So yay!
Yay! Thank you guys so much, and have a absolutely wonderful rest of your day. And also, let us know if you have any ideas for future webinars. We're thinking about a tapestry heavy webinar next. So again, thank you so much. Let us know if you have any questions, and bye.
Bye.